I've tried several games from this current Steam Next Fest, and from all the games I've tried, only one really gave me a really positive impression in the first batch. The game was The Last Case of Benedict Fox, a really interesting mixture of genre backed up by a great art style. The demo wastes no time in getting you into the action. The tutorial is brief and tells you mid-action everything you need to know. It's satisfying to not have walls of text like in some of the other games we'll be talking about. Soon enough you'll find yourself in a mansion. It doesn't try too hard to be a Spencer Mansion homage. It feels like its own place. However, the puzzles are set up in a way that's similar. There is even object examination. The combat system on the other end is a bit more elaborate. While not becoming a Devil May Cry, it does require a bit of practice. It's the classic light, heavy attack and parry. Although the attacks share only one button, so there's none of the now generic XXX and YYY. It also has a bit of alone in the dark in its DNA since you have a gun. It charges after a certain number of hits have landed. The alone in the dark influence also stretches to the gothic horror atmosphere. The last and major aspect of its gameplay is the Metroidvania style. The map was pretty expensive in the demo, and the detective team is being kept alive by finding clues. Modern improvements are also present in the form of teleporters at certain points that allow for fast travel. There's also the typical Dark Souls resources that you lose upon death. You can secure it by getting to fast travel points. I've mentioned earlier the art style. The style is quite striking and has obvious Lovecraftian influence. This comes into play in the level design. The demo takes place in the remnants of the mind of Benedict's father. It allows for eerie sights that don't necessarily adhere to any rules of reality. Despite being 2.5D, the atmosphere is thick, and the inclusion of modern graphical techniques further push that. The reflections and the rain being one thing in particular that shows off well. It's quite the difference from Resident Evil 4 and its rain gate issue. Now, as for the other games, I've played Gestalt, Steam and Cinder, Rusted Moss, Prison City and Radio the Universe. I'm going to speak in general broad terms about these games. I want to say first and foremost that they're not bad games. Indie games have really evolved from the days of the decade of 2010 when most of these games were uninspired homages to Mario 3. Unfortunately, there's still a big issue. Despite the fact that they have diversified and have a solid basis in terms of game design, these titles fail at capturing the elements that gave success to the games they're paying homage to. The games feel really basic. If they were some of your first titles, you would love them. However, as someone who did play other games of each type, I can't help finding them lacking. Prison City, for example, had a lot of superficial references to Escape from New York and Metal Gear. The gameplay is close to Contra, but really slow and limited. The biggest missing element is the lack of variety in weapons. For a demo, you would think you would want to have a good vertical slice, but no. It actually ends up having less than these games that came out 30 to 40 years ago that it's trying to emulate. Comparatively, Benedict Fox is a mixture of different styles, but it has its own identity, in part because it mixes things that were not seen together necessarily all that often. It reminds me of game design from the 90s. It evokes games like Parasite Eve. It's not the first time I've mentioned it, but it has become such a novel thing. Genres have become so uniform and repetitive. Imagine the Ubisoft open world game design. So having a game like this is really not only a breath of fresh air, but also something familiar at the same time. I'm definitely playing this game when it comes out.